Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. You can also leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comment section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Yoo Young-chul was born on April 18, 1970, in South Korea. He did not grow up in a wealthy family. His childhood was marked by poverty. His mother struggled to make money. His maternal grandmother helped take care of him. His grandmother later said that life was very hard during those years. She said the difficulties were so great that she once had thoughts of killing the young boy because he added to her daughter's heavy burdens. As a teenager, Yoo developed an interest in drawing and art. He hoped to attend a special high school that focused on the arts. To get into this school, he had to pass an interview and a test. During this process, it was discovered that Yoo was colorblind. He could not see colors the way other people could. This meant he could not pursue painting or other arts that required correct color use. This rejection was a deep humiliation for him. After this, he spent a lot of time alone, fiddling with drawing pencils instead of paints. People around him began to see him as having an odd and withdrawn personality. As a young man, Yoo did not find a stable career. He moved from one low-paying job to another. He had trouble keeping work for a long time. His social life was not busy. He did not have many friends. In 1992, when he was 22 years old, Yoo got married. He and his wife later had a son. However, Yoo was not a stable husband or father. He began to get into trouble with the law. Starting in his 20s, Yoo was arrested many times for different crimes. These crimes were mostly thefts and other non-violent offenses. He was convicted by the courts 14 separate times. Because of these convictions, he served a total of 7 years in prison at different times. These prison sentences were served before the major crimes he later committed. His marriage did not survive these problems. His wife and son eventually left him. Yoo lived alone after this. Yoo's life continued on a bad path. He could not build a normal career or family life. He lived in cheap apartments and had little money. He felt angry about his poverty and his failures. He blamed other people for his problems. He developed a strong dislike for wealthy people, believing they had easy lives. He also grew to hate certain women, due to a past relationship where he felt betrayed by a lover. These feelings grew inside him over many years, but he did not act on them in a violent way yet. He continued his small criminal acts, moving in and out of prison. After his last release from prison, Yoo Young-chul lived alone in a small rented room in Western Seoul. His anger at wealthy people and his hatred for certain women had grown very strong. He decided to act on these feelings. His first serious crimes targeted wealthy elderly couples. He chose them because he believed old rich people had lived easy lives while he suffered in poverty. Starting in September 2003, Yoo began to plan these attacks. He would watch neighborhoods with nice houses. He looked for homes where older people lived. He carried a small hammer with him. He would break into these homes during the day or evening. He used his hammer to attack the elderly residents. He hit them on the head many times until they died. After killing them, he would search the house and move things around. He did this to make the scene look like a robbery had happened. However, he did not take money or valuable items. He left them behind. This confused the police when they investigated. They could not understand why a robber would kill people, but not steal anything. Yoo committed several murders like this between September and November 2003. The police started to look for a pattern. They saw that the victims were all older and wealthy. They also saw that the method was the same, a hammer attack made to look like a robbery. You saw news reports about the police investigation. He realized the police were focusing on the murders of the elderly. He decided to change his targets to avoid getting caught. In early 2004, you began to target a different group of people. He focused on women who worked as masseuses or in the sex trade. His hatred for women from his past personal life fueled this. He used the telephone to contact massage parlors or individual women advertising such services. He would pretend to be a client. He would ask a woman to come to his rented room. When the woman arrived, he would have sex with her and then attack her. He used the same hammer to kill them in his room. After these murders, you faced a new problem. He could not leave the bodies in his room, and he could not make these deaths look like a robbery. He needed to hide the bodies completely. He bought a large suitcase. He also bought a saw and other sharp tools. He would dismember the bodies of his victims in his bathroom. He placed the body parts into the suitcase. Late at night, he would take the suitcase to the mountains near Seoul, specifically the area around Bangwon Temple. He buried the parts in shallow graves there. He also mutilated the faces and fingers of some victims to make them harder to identify if they were found. In January 2004, he was arrested by police for a small theft unrelated to the murders. He was only held for 2 days and then released. The police did not connect him to the serial murders at that time. After his release, he went back to killing. He became more frequent in his crimes through the spring of 2004. Several women who worked in massage parlors went missing after getting calls from a specific client. The owner of one parlor became suspicious because this pattern happened more than once. The parlor owner talked to other business owners, and they realized a few women from different places had vanished after similar calls. They began to warn each other. In July 2004, you called one of these parlors again. The owner recognized the voice or pattern from the warnings. The owner decided to set a trap. He agreed to send a woman to a meeting place, but he also contacted the police. One police officer went with the parlor owner and some employees to the meeting place. However, the police officer did not stay. He left before you arrived. When you came to the meeting place, the massage parlor employees surrounded him and detained him themselves. They held him until another police officer came. That officer then put handcuffs on you. He was taken to a police station for questioning about the missing women. At this point, the police did not know he was also responsible for the murders of the elderly couples. They only suspected him in the disappearances of the masseuses. After Yu Young Chul was taken to the police station, officers began to question him about the missing masseuses. At first, you did not confess to murder. Then, while in the questioning room, he pretended to have a medical problem. He faked symptoms of a seizure. The police officers loosened his restraints so he could breathe more easily. You used this chance to attack the officers and run out of the police station. He escaped. A large manhunt began immediately. Police searched the area around the station and his known addresses. 12 hours later, they found you hiding nearby and arrested him again. This escape made the police believe he was hiding very serious crimes. Back in custody, he was questioned by more experienced investigators. They pressed him about the missing women. Under this pressure, you began to talk. He not only confessed to killing the masseuses, but also surprised the police by confessing to the unsolved murders of the wealthy elderly couples from the previous year. He explained in detail how he committed each crime. He told police he used a hammer for the elderly couples and the same tool for the women. He described how he dismembered the women's bodies and where he buried them in the mountains near Bangwon Temple. The police took you to the mountain areas he described. They used his directions to dig in the soil. They found human remains in many locations. They recovered parts of 11 bodies from the mountains. The forensic teams worked to identify the victims through dental records and DNA. Most were identified as the missing masseuses. During these interrogations, you also made a shocking statement. He said that he had eaten the livers of some of his victims. The police could not find physical evidence to prove this, but they recorded his confession. Yu's apartment was searched thoroughly. Police found movies about serial killers and crime. They found the hammer they believed was the murder weapon. They also found tools like saws and knives. The evidence in the apartment, along with his confessions and the bodies found in the mountains, built a very strong case against him. Police also connected him to one more murder from February 2004, where he had killed a woman working in a clothing store after pretending to be a police officer. He was charged with multiple counts of murder. His trial began in September 2004. In court, Yu's behavior was very disruptive. At the first hearing, he refused to have a lawyer and said he would boycott the trial. He was forced to attend later hearings. During one hearing, he suddenly lunged at the three judges, and guards had to restrain him. On another day, he tried to attack a spectator in the courtroom who yelled at him. He also tried to commit suicide in his cell one night before a court date. Because of his behavior, the court sessions were often chaotic. Despite Yu's confessions to many murders, the court only found enough solid evidence to convict him for 20 murders. One murder charge, for the woman from the clothing store, was dismissed because the evidence was not strong enough. The prosecutors asked the judge for the death penalty. Yu told the court he was thankful they asked for the death penalty. On December 13, 2004, the Seoul Central District Court sentenced Yu Young-chul to death. The judge stated that the crimes were among the worst in the country's history and caused enormous pain to the families and society. He was sent to the Seoul Detention Center to await his execution. However, South Korea had not carried out an execution since 1997. Yu remains in prison. In the early years of his imprisonment, he misbehaved. He demanded special treatment from guards, harassed them at night, and was generally unruly. Reports say other inmates beat him up because of this behavior. Later, it was found he bribed guards to bring him comics and adult books into his cell. Because of this, he was transferred to a stricter prison with more surveillance. He was later moved back to Seoul Detention Center. The families of the victims received justice through the trial, but their pain continued. The mother of one victim attacked Yu with an umbrella at the prosecutor's office, screaming that her daughter would be alive if police had caught him sooner. The case shocked the nation and made people debate the death penalty again. Yu Young-chul remains in prison, his death sentence not carried out, serving a life term without freedom. The story of his crimes ended with a prison cell that would be his home for the rest of his life. Story 2. Alexander Pichushkin was born on April 9, 1974, in a town called Mytishi, near Moscow in Russia. Soon after, he moved with his mother to an apartment in the city of Moscow itself. Their apartment was on the 5th floor of a building on Kersenskaya Street. He lived there with his mother, a younger half-sister, her husband, and their son. The family shared a small, 2-bedroom apartment. This building was very important because it was only a 6-minute walk from a huge, wooded area called Bitsa Park. For his first few years, Alexander was remembered as a child who liked to talk and play with others. This changed because of an accident. When he was a boy, he fell backwards off a swing. As the swing kept moving, it swung back and hit him very hard in the forehead. Doctors later thought this accident hurt the front part of his brain. This part of the brain helps control impulses and anger. Because Alexander was a child, his skull was thinner, so the injury to his brain was likely more severe. After this fall, people noticed he often became angry very quickly and acted without thinking. His behavior became a problem at school. Other children at his regular school noticed he was different. They bullied him. They called him names like retard and sometimes hit him. This made Alexander's anger worse. Because of his difficult behavior and the bullying, his mother decided to move him to a different school. This new school was for children with learning problems or disabilities. The focus there was less on learning standard subjects and more on basic coping skills. When Alexander became a teenager, his maternal grandfather saw that the boy was actually very smart. His grandfather felt Alexander's intelligence was being wasted. He was not being challenged at his special school, and he had no good activities at home. To help, Alexander went to live in his grandfather's home. His grandfather encouraged him to use his mind. The most important activity he found was the game of chess. Alexander learned to play chess very well. His grandfather introduced him to the old men who played chess in Bitsa Park. Alexander began to play against them. He was a very strong player and almost always won. Winning at chess gave him a way to feel powerful and in control, which he liked. But he still faced bullying from children from his old school when he saw them. Then, when Alexander was nearly finished with his teenage years, his grandfather died. This loss was very heavy for Alexander. He had to move back to his mother's small, crowded apartment. After his grandfather's death, Alexander felt a lot of pain. To try to feel better and to calm his angry feelings, he started to drink a lot of vodka. He continued to play chess in Bitsa Park with the old men, and he drank vodka with them. He could drink a lot without it seeming to affect his chess game. Around this time, he began a secret habit. When he knew he would be around young children, he would bring a video camera. He would film himself threatening them. In one known video, he held a child upside down by one leg. He spoke to the camera, saying the child was in his power and that he would drop him from a window to his death. He would watch these videos alone to feel powerful. But by the time he was 18 years old, in 1992, even this dark habit was not enough to satisfy his feelings. Alexander Pichushkin's first murder happened on July 27, 1992. He was 18 years old. He had a classmate and friend named Mikhail Otachuk. Alexander told Mikhail about his idea to kill 64 people, which is the number of squares on a chessboard. He arranged to meet Mikhail in Bitsa Park to talk about this plan. When they met in the park, Mikhail changed his mind. He told Alexander he did not want to go through with any killings. Alexander felt betrayed and very angry that his friend would tease him with the idea and then refuse. In his anger, Alexander strangled Mikhail. After Mikhail was dead, Alexander needed to hide the body. He found a sewer entrance in the park and threw the body down into it. Then he went home to his mother's apartment nearby. Mikhail's body was never found. After Mikhail disappeared, his family reported him missing. The police in Moscow started an investigation. Witnesses told the police that they had last seen Mikhail walking toward Bitsa Park with Alexander Pichushkin. Based on this, the police went to Alexander's apartment on July 30th and arrested him. They took him to the police station for questioning. Alexander told the police that he had met Mikhail in the park, but said he had left him there alive and well. The police had no physical evidence, like a body or murder weapon, to connect Alexander to a crime. With only the witness statement about them walking together, they had no choice but to release him. After this, Alexander did not kill anyone for several years. He worked different simple jobs, including one at a grocery store. A significant event in Russia happened in 1996. The government stopped using the death penalty. This is said to have reignited Alexander's interest in killing, as he believed the worst punishment he could now face was life in prison. His next murder happened on May 17, 2001. Alexander was in Bitsa Park playing chess with a 52-year-old man named Yevgeny Pronin. After their game, Alexander invited Yevgeny for a walk. He told a lie to make the man come with him. He said it was the anniversary of his dog's death, and he wanted to visit the dog's grave in a quiet part of the park. Yevgeny agreed. When they reached an isolated spot, Alexander took out a bottle of vodka. He offered Yevgeny a drink and proposed a toast to the dead dog. When Yevgeny was distracted, Alexander hit him very hard in the head with the vodka bottle. The blow killed Yevgeny. Alexander then threw the body into a nearby well. This murder began a long period of killings that lasted from 2001 to September 2005. Alexander later called this his sewers period. His method was similar each time. He would go to Bitsa Park, which was full of homeless people and elderly men who drank there. He would choose a person who was alone. He would start a friendly conversation, often about chess or sharing a drink. He would then offer them vodka. When the person agreed to drink with him, he would lead them to a more secluded part of the park. He would then attack them from behind. He usually used a heavy hammer or a full vodka bottle to strike the back of the person's head. After they were dead, he would often throw the body into a sewer pipe, a well, or a deep ditch in the park. Sometimes he would put an empty vodka bottle or a stick into the victim's head wound. He did this 36 times during these years. 3 of the people he attacked during this time survived their injuries and lived. Around 2005, Alexander's method changed. From October 2005 until June 2006, he entered what he called his open period. He became more bold. He now almost always used a hammer. He would attack his victims from behind with multiple blows to the head. After killing them, he would firmly push an empty vodka bottle into the severe wound in their skull. He also began targeting people who lived in his own neighborhood. 10 of his victims lived in the same group of apartment buildings on Kersenskaya Street where he lived. He would meet them near home, gain their trust, and then suggest going for a walk to Bitsa Park. Once in the park, he would kill them the same way. During this time, Alexander developed feelings for a young woman who was his neighbor. She was 18 years old. He was upset to learn she had a boyfriend. Not long after, this boyfriend died by falling from a window. The death was called a suicide by the police. Alexander, however, counted this man as one of his victims, though he never explained how he was involved. The crime that led to Alexander Pichushkin's capture happened in June 2006. He invited a 36-year-old co-worker from the grocery store, a woman named Marina Mosklyova, to go for a walk with him. Marina was somewhat suspicious of Alexander, but she agreed to go. Before leaving her home, she wrote a note for her young son. The note said she was going for a walk with Alexander Pichushkin and wrote down his phone number. Alexander knew about this note, but was not worried. He took Marina to Bitsa Park. There, he attacked her from behind with his hammer, killed her, and left her body in the park. Marina Mosklyova's body was discovered in Bitsa Park on June 14, 2006. The injuries were clear, severe blows to the head and a vodka bottle placed in the wound. This matched a pattern of unsolved murders in the area that police had begun to link together. When police searched Marina's belongings, they found a Moscow Metro ticket. They collected surveillance video from the station where the ticket was used at the time it was issued. The video showed Marina Mosklyova walking on the platform. Right beside her was Alexander Pichushkin. This gave the police direct evidence, placing him with the victim just hours before her death. The police moved quickly. They went to Alexander Pichushkin's apartment and arrested him. Once in custody, he was questioned for many hours. He soon began to confess. He led police investigators through Bitsa Park, showing them exactly where he had killed different people and where he had disposed of the bodies. As part of the Russian investigation process, he reenacted the murders on video. He demonstrated how he approached people, how he offered them vodka, and how he struck them from behind. He remembered many details very clearly. During his confession, he explained more about his methods. He told police that some victims, especially during his earlier sewers period, were killed by being thrown into the deep sewer canals in the park, where they drowned. He stated that deciding who lived and who died made him feel like a god. He said, "For me, a life without murder is like a life without food for you." He claimed his goal was to kill 64 people, but later said he would have simply continued killing forever. Alexander Pichushkin's trial began in Moscow. He was charged with 49 counts of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. During the trial, he was kept in a clear glass cage in the courtroom for security. He surprised the court by asking the judge to add 11 more murders to his official list, claiming a total of 60 kills. The court only judged him based on the cases where there was evidence. Many family members of the victims attended the trial to see him. On October 24, 2007, the judge, Vladimir Yusov, found Alexander Pichushkin guilty of all 49 murders and 3 attempted murders. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. The order stated that the first 15 years of his life sentence must be spent in solitary confinement. Alexander Pichushkin appealed the sentence, arguing that life in prison was too harsh and asking for a reduced sentence of 25 years. The appeal was rejected, and his life sentence was confirmed. Alexander Pichushkin was sent to a remote prison called Polar Owl, located in the Arctic region of Russia. He remains there, living in solitary confinement as required by his sentence. The families of his victims received legal closure, but no relief from their loss. The case closed the largest serial murder investigation in Moscow's history, and the killer's confinement is permanent. Story 3. Charles Sobhraj was born on April 6, 1944, in Saigon, Vietnam. At that time, Vietnam was a French colony called French Indochina. His biological father was an Indian man named Sobhraj. His mother was a Vietnamese woman. His parents were not married. His father left soon after he was born and did not help raise him. When Charles was a young boy, his mother married a French army officer. This officer's last name was Gourmuk. Charles took this man's last name, becoming Charles Gourmuk Sobhraj. The family moved with the soldier's job. They traveled between Vietnam and France many times. Charles felt he was not treated as well as the other children born to his mother and her new husband. He felt like an outsider in his own family. As a teenager in France, Charles began to get into trouble. He did not like to follow rules. He started stealing things. In 1963, when he was 19 years old, he was caught breaking into a building to steal. This is called burglary. He was sent to Poissy prison near Paris for this crime. In prison, Charles learned how to talk to people to get what he wanted. He was very clever and charming. He convinced the prison guards to give him special treatment, like letting him keep books in his cell. When he left prison, he met a rich and kind man named Felix d'Escone. Felix was a volunteer who helped former prisoners. Charles impressed Felix with his good manners and intelligence. Felix let Charles live in his nice apartment in Paris. Charles now lived between two worlds. He lived in a rich part of Paris with Felix, but he also kept friends in the criminal world. He began to steal from rich people's homes. He also created clever scams to trick people out of their money. During this time, Charles met a young woman named Chantal Compagnon. She came from a good family. Charles was charming, and she fell in love with him. He asked her to marry him. On the same day he proposed, police tried to stop him while he was driving a car he had stolen. Charles tried to drive away very fast but crashed the car. He was arrested again. The court sent him to prison for 8 more months. Chantal still loved him. She waited for him. They got married right after he was released from prison. Charles became a French citizen around 1970. This was because his mother was born in a French territory. Now he had a French passport, but the police in France were watching him because of his crimes. Charles decided to leave France. His wife, Chantal, was pregnant. In 1970, they left Europe and traveled towards Asia. To pay for their travel, Charles used fake papers. He also tricked other tourists they met on their journey. He would become their friend and then steal their money or passports. They finally arrived in Bombay, India. In Bombay, Chantal gave birth to their daughter, Usha. Charles did not get a normal job. Instead, he started a business stealing cars. He would steal expensive cars and sell them to other criminals. He made good money from this. He used a lot of this money for gambling. He liked to bet on cards and other games, and he often lost. In 1973, Charles tried to rob a jewelry store in a Delhi hotel. He had a gun. The robbery went wrong, and he was caught by the police. He was put in jail. In jail, he pretended to be very sick. His wife, Chantal, helped with his plan. The police took him to a hospital. At the hospital, he tricked the guard and escaped. He ran away, but was caught again a few days later. His father in India paid money to the court so Charles could wait for his trial outside of jail. This is called bail. As soon as he was out on bail, Charles ran away again. He did not stay for his trial. He fled to Kabul, Afghanistan. His wife and child went with him. In Kabul, he saw many young Western tourists traveling the hippie trail. These tourists often carried cash and passports. Charles and Chantal began to befriend these tourists. They would then drug them and steal everything they had. The police in Kabul arrested them for these crimes. In jail, Charles again pretended to be terribly ill. He was taken to a hospital, drugged the guard there, and escaped. This time, he escaped alone. He left his wife and daughter behind in Kabul. Chantal finally decided she had enough of this life. She took their daughter and returned to France. She never lived with Charles again. Charles was now alone and moving from country to country. He used stolen passports to travel. In Turkey, he met his younger half-brother, Andrei. Andrei began to travel with Charles and help him with crimes. They stole and scammed people in Turkey and Greece. In Athens, Greece, they were arrested. Charles tricked the police during an identity check and managed to run away. He left his brother Andrei behind. The Greek police sent Andrei back to Turkey for his crimes there. Andrei went to prison for 18 years. Charles kept running. After leaving his brother in Greece, Charles Sobridge traveled to India. In Bombay, he met a Canadian tourist named Marie-Andre Leclerc. She was looking for excitement. Charles was charming and told her stories of being a rich gem dealer. She became his girlfriend. He controlled her completely. She knew he did illegal things but stayed with him. She helped him with his crimes. Charles needed a team. He used a simple method to get people to trust him. He would create a problem for someone, and then he would solve it. For example, he stole 2 French tourists' passports. Then he acted like a helpful friend and found the passports for them. The tourists, Yannick and Jacques, were so grateful they decided to travel with him. In another case, he met a French tourist named Dominique Renelot. Charles secretly gave him drugs that made him very sick with stomach problems. Then Charles nursed him back to health. Renelot felt he owed Charles his life and stayed with him. Charles also met a young Indian man named Ajay Chowdhury in Bombay. Chowdhury was a criminal like Charles. He became Charles's main partner. Charles taught Chowdhury his methods. Together, they decided to target other Western tourists on what was called the hippie trail across Asia. Their first known murder happened in 1975 in Thailand. They met a young American woman named Teresa Knowlton. She was traveling alone. Charles and Chowdhury spent time with her. They then drugged her. After she was unconscious, they drowned her in the sea near Pattaya. They made it look like a swimming accident. She was found wearing a bikini. The police at first thought it was an accident. Their next victim was a young Turkish man named Vitaly Hakim. He was traveling with his French girlfriend, Charmaine Carew. Charles and Chowdhury befriended them. They drugged Hakim, killed him, and then burned his body on a roadside. They took his money and passport. Soon after, they met 2 Dutch students, Henk Bentanja and his fiancée Cornelia Hemker. Charles invited them to Thailand. He and Chowdhury poisoned the Dutch couple with drugs that made them very weak. Charles then nursed them back to health, just as he had done with others. The couple felt they had to trust him. Meanwhile, Hakim's girlfriend, Charmaine Carew, came to Bangkok looking for her missing boyfriend. She found Charles and asked about Hakim. Charles knew she could connect him to the missing man. To silence her, Charles and Chowdhury killed Charmaine Carew. They drowned her like Teresa Knowlton. She was also found in a bikini. Now, with Carew asking questions, Charles knew the Dutch couple, Bintanja and Hemker, were a risk. They had seen too much. Charles and Chowdhury took the Dutch couple to a remote beach. They strangled them to death. They then poured gasoline on the bodies and set them on fire to make them hard to identify. The police found the burned bodies of the Dutch couple on December 16, 1975. The next day, the police identified them. Charles knew the police would soon look for him. On December 18th, he and Marie-André Leclerc used the dead Dutch couple's passports to fly to Nepal. In Kathmandu, Nepal, they met two more tourists, an American woman named Connie Jo Bronzik and a Canadian man named Laurent Carrière. Charles and Leclerc spent time with them. On December 21st or 22, Charles drugged both of them. When they were unconscious, he and Leclerc killed them. They took their passports and money. They then used these new passports to fly back to Thailand. Back in Thailand, the other members of Charles's group, Yannick, Jacques, and Renelot, had become suspicious. They found some of the victims' belongings in Charles's apartment. They realized Charles was a killer. They were afraid he would kill them too. They secretly went to the French embassy and then flew back to Paris. They also told the Thai police about their suspicions. Charles now knew the police in Thailand were looking for him. He left Thailand with Leclerc and Chowdhury. They went to Calcutta, India. There, they met an Israeli man named Avoni Jacob. They drugged and killed him to get his passport. Charles now used this Israeli passport to travel. The group traveled to Singapore and then back to India. In March 1976, they boldly returned to Bangkok. The Thai police questioned them about the murders, but did not have enough proof to hold them. They were released. Charles sent Ajay Chowdhury to Malaysia to steal gems from a jewelry seller. Chowdhury did this and brought the gems back to Charles. This was the last time anyone saw Chowdhury alive. Charles likely killed his own partner to keep all the gems and to remove someone who knew too much. Chowdhury's body was never found. Charles and Leclerc then flew to Europe. They went to Geneva, Switzerland, pretending to be gem dealers. But an international police alert called an Interpol warrant was issued for Charles for the murders in Thailand. He knew he could not stay in Europe. He returned to Asia, to Bombay, in mid-1976. He formed a new group with two Western women, Barbara Smith and Mary Ellen Either. He used the same tricks to control them. His next victim was a French tourist named Jean-Luc Solomon. Charles poisoned him during a robbery. The dose was too strong and Solomon died. In July 1976, Charles and the two women went to New Delhi. They found a large group of French students on a tour. Charles pretended to be a friendly tour guide. He said he could show them the real India. The students trusted him. He invited them to his room for a party. He told them they should take medicine to prevent stomach sickness from the food and water. He gave them pills. These pills were actually strong sedatives meant to knock them out so he could rob them. The drugs worked faster than Charles expected. The students began falling unconscious right in front of him. 3 of the students realized they had been poisoned. They fought Charles, even though they were feeling weak. They managed to overpower him and hold him down. One student ran to get help. They called the police. The police in New Delhi arrived at the scene and arrested Charles Sobhraj. They also arrested his 2 accomplices, Barbara Smith and Mary Ellen Either. The French students explained how Sobhraj had poisoned them. During questioning, Smith and Either were frightened. They confessed to the police about Sobhraj's recent crimes. They told the police about the murder of Jean-Luc Solomon in Bombay. Sobhraj was charged with murder for Solomon's death and many other crimes, including the poisoning of the students. All 3 were sent to Tihar jail in Delhi to wait for their trial. In prison, Smith and Ether became very depressed. They tried to kill themselves, but they survived. Sabridge, however, was different. He had hidden valuable gems in his body when he was arrested. He used these gems to bribe the prison guards. He paid for special treatment. He lived in comfort in jail with better food, a television, and more freedom inside the prison walls. His trial in India became a long public show. He hired lawyers and then fired them. He acted as his own lawyer sometimes. He even brought his half-brother Andrei, who was out of prison in Turkey, to help with his defense. Sabridge went on a hunger strike at one point to protest the conditions, even though his own conditions were quite good. The court finally sentenced him to 12 years in prison for the attempted murder of the French students and for the robbery connected to Jean-Luc Salomon's death. Marie-Andrée Leclerc was later arrested and sent to India. She was found guilty of helping drug the students. She became sick with cancer in prison and was released. She returned to Canada, where she died in 1984. While Sabridge was in prison in India, police in other countries were still building cases against him for the earlier murders. A Dutch diplomat in Thailand named Herman Nippenberg had been investigating the deaths of the two Dutch students, Henk Bintanja and Cornelia Hemker. He gathered evidence and connected Sabridge to those murders and to the deaths of Teresa Knowlton and Charmaine Carew. Nippenberg got permission to search Sabridge's old apartment in Bangkok a month after Sabridge had left Thailand. In the apartment, he found passports belonging to the murdered victims, as well as syringes and bottles of poison. This evidence was sent to police agencies around the world. Sabridge knew that if he finished his prison sentence in India, he could be sent to Thailand to face murder charges. In Thailand, the punishment for murder was execution. He decided he wanted to stay in prison in India longer, until the legal time limit for the Thai charges ran out. In March 1986, after 10 years in prison, he put his plan into action. He threw a big party for guards and inmates. He gave them food and wine that was mixed with strong sleeping pills. When everyone fell asleep, he simply walked out of the prison. He was now a fugitive again. He traveled to Goa, India. He thought he was safe, but an Indian police inspector named Madhukar Zend had been studying Sabridge's case. Inspector Zend guessed that Sabridge might go to a popular restaurant in Goa called Okokero. The police inspector went there and saw Sabridge eating a meal. He arrested him on the spot. Because of his escape, an Indian court added 10 more years to Sabridge's prison sentence. This was exactly what Sabridge wanted. The extra time in India meant the possibility of execution in Thailand would expire. Sabridge was released from Tihar jail in February 1997. He was 52 years old. By then, many witnesses and evidence in the Thai cases were no longer available. No country immediately asked for his extradition. India put him on a plane to France. He settled in Paris and sold his life story to writers and filmmakers for money. He enjoyed his fame. In 2003, Sabridge made a mistake. He traveled to Nepal. The murders of Connie Jo Bronzik and Laurent Carrière in Kathmandu had no time limit for prosecution. Nepalese police were still looking for him. A journalist in Kathmandu recognized Sabridge in a casino. The journalist followed him and published a story with his photo. The Nepalese police saw the report. They went to the casino and arrested Sabridge. The police in Nepal reopened the 1975 murder cases. They used the old evidence collected by diplomat Herman Nippenberg. In 2004, a court in Kathmandu found Charles Sabridge guilty of murdering American tourist Connie Jo Bronzik. The judge sentenced him to life in prison in Nepal. Sabridge appealed many times, but the sentence was confirmed. In 2014, another court in Nepal also found him guilty of murdering Canadian tourist Laurent Carrière and added 20 more years to his sentence. Sabridge stayed in a Nepalese prison for 19 years. In December 2022, when he was 78 years old, the Supreme Court of Nepal ordered his release. The court said he was released because of his old age and good behavior in prison. He was ordered to leave Nepal within 15 days. On December 23, 2022, he was taken from prison directly to the airport in Kathmandu. He was put on a flight to Paris, France, where he remains a free man, unable to return to Nepal for at least 10 years. Charles Sobhraj's life of crime ultimately led to decades in prison, ending only when his advanced age finally secured his release. Story 4. Saisaka Nakamura was born on September 10, 1923, in Shizuoka Prefecture, Japan. He was born completely deaf. This meant he could not hear any sounds, and he never learned to speak words. His family was a farming family. He had parents, brothers, and sisters. Because he was deaf, Saisaka's childhood was very hard. In the 1920s and 1930s in Japan, there were not many schools or programs for deaf children. He did not learn sign language in a formal way. This made communication very difficult. He could not easily tell his family what he needed or how he felt. His family did not know how to communicate with him well. They often became frustrated with him. They did not treat him kindly. He was often left alone. Saisaka was actually a very intelligent boy. When he was allowed to go to school, he did very well in his studies. He could read and write. He got high marks. This showed he had a good mind. But his success in school did not help him at home or with other people. He had no friends. The other children did not understand him. They saw him as strange and different. They did not include him in their games or talk to him. Saisaka became a loner. A loner is a person who is always alone. He spent most of his time by himself. He felt angry and sad about being isolated. He felt the world was unfair to him. One thing he enjoyed was going to the cinema. He liked to watch movies. Because he was deaf, he could not hear the dialogue in the films. But he could see the pictures clearly. He especially liked to watch historical action films. These films often showed samurai warriors using long, sharp Japanese swords. The samurai in the films would use these swords to fight and kill their enemies. Saisaka liked to watch these scenes of violence. He thought the samurai were strong and powerful. In his quiet, isolated world, these films were a major form of entertainment and escape. As he grew into his teenage years, his life did not get better. He remained at home, working on the family farm. He did not have a job in the town. He did not have a social life. His family interactions were still poor. They did not talk with him. They mostly ignored him or gave him orders. He kept his feelings of anger and loneliness inside him. He continued to be very intelligent, but he had no good way to use his intelligence. He had no positive goals for his future. This was Saisaka Nakamura's early life. A deaf, intelligent boy growing into a young man, trapped in silence, treated poorly, with no friends, and filled with unresolved anger. Saisaka Nakamura's first known violent act happened on August 22, 1938. He was 14 years old. On that day, he encountered two women. He attempted to force himself on them, which is an attempted rape. The women fought back against him. Because they resisted, Saisaka became angry. He took a weapon, likely a knife, and stabbed both women to death. These two murders are often counted separately from his later series of killings. 3 years passed. On August 18, 1941, Saisaka was now 17. He attacked two more women. He killed one of them. He injured the second woman, but she survived. This attack showed his method. He used a sharp blade, a knife or a short sword, to stab his victims quickly. 2 days later, on August 20, 1941, 3 people were found dead. They had been stabbed. Saisaka was responsible for these deaths. The police found the bodies, but they did not have good clues. They did not connect these killings to the attack from 2 days before. The community was frightened, but no suspect was named. The violence then moved into his own home. On September 27, 1941, Saisaka fought with his family. He took his weapon and murdered his brother. He then attacked his father, his sister-in-law, and his young niece. All of these family members were injured by his knife, but they did not die. After this, his family knew he was the killer. They knew he had murdered the people in the village and had now attacked them. However, they were too afraid of him to go to the police. They feared he would take revenge and kill them if they told anyone. So they stayed silent. Almost a year later, on August 30th, 1942, Saisaku committed his worst crime. He went to a house where a family lived. He attacked the mother and father, killing them both. He also killed their young son and one of their daughters. He then attempted to force himself on another daughter in the house. After this attack, he left. The entire family in the house was now dead, except for one injured daughter. During this time, Japan was fighting in World War II. The government and police were very focused on the war. News about bad events, like serial murders, was often restricted or not published. Officials thought such news would scare people and cause problems for the war effort. Because of this, the public did not know a serial killer was active. The police investigations were also slow and not well coordinated. This allowed Saisaku to continue killing for a long time without being caught. His own family's silence also protected him. The police discovered the crimes at the family home on August 30th, 1942. A neighbor found the bodies and called the authorities. This was a very big crime because a whole family was killed. The police had to investigate seriously. They began asking people in the area if they had seen anything strange. During their questions, the police heard about Saisaku Nakamura. People told the police that Saisaku was a deaf man who acted strangely. They also said he was very strong and often carried tools or knives. The police then went to talk to Saisaku's own family. Saisaku's family was very afraid, but now they had to speak to the police. They told the police that Saisaku had attacked them the year before. They also said they believed he had committed the other murders in the area. This was the first time the family had told anyone about Saisaku's violence. The police arrested Saisaku Nakamura on October 12, 1942. After his arrest, the police questioned him. Because he was deaf, the questioning was done in writing. Saisaku could read and write well. He wrote down his confessions. He admitted to killing 9 people. He also admitted to 2 other killings that the police did not know about. He explained his actions in a calm way. He did not show strong emotion in his writing. After Saisaku's arrest, his father, Fumisada Nakamura, felt great shame and sadness. On November 11, 1942, Saisaku's father committed suicide. He killed himself because he could not live with the knowledge of his son's crimes. Saisaku was put on trial. Because Japan was at war, a special law called the Wartime Criminal Special Law was used. This law made trials faster. Doctors examined Saisaku. The doctors said he was insane. They said his mental state was not normal. They argued he should not be found guilty because of his insanity. However, the court did not accept this. The trial moved quickly. The judges looked at the evidence and his written confessions. In February 1944, the court found Saisaku Nakamura guilty of multiple murders. The sentence was death. He was to be executed by hanging. On July 24, 1944, the sentence was carried out. Saisaku Nakamura was hanged at the prison. He was 20 years old. Many years later, in October 2007, a book was published in Japan. The book's title was Youth Crime in Pre-War Japan. One chapter in this book discussed the crimes of Saisaku Nakamura. The book used old records and court documents to explain the case. This book made sure the facts of the events were not forgotten. The story of Saisaku Nakamura ended with his execution in 1944. Story 5. Takahiro Shiraishi was born on October 9, 1990, in Tokyo, Japan. He grew up in a normal home with his parents and a younger sister. His father worked in an office. His mother took care of the home. From the outside, the family seemed ordinary. In school, Takahiro was not a top student, but he was not a major problem either. He was quiet and often kept to himself. He did not have many close friends. Sometimes, other students saw him as an easy target for bullying because he did not fight back. He just seemed to want to be invisible. After he finished high school, Takahiro did not go to university. He moved through different simple jobs. He worked in a factory for a while. The work was repetitive and boring. He did not stay there long. He then found a job as a scout in the Kabukicho area of Tokyo. Kabukicho is a district known for nightlife and adult entertainment. His job was to approach young women on the street. He would talk to them. He would offer them jobs in bars or clubs. These jobs often led to work in the sex industry. He was good at talking to strangers and convincing them, but people who worked in the area started to notice him. Other scouts and some club owners thought he was strange. They described him as a creepy scout. He made people feel uncomfortable, but he did not break any laws with this work. In his personal life, Takahiro had almost no friends. He lived alone in a small apartment in Tokyo. He spent most of his time on his computer. He was very active on social media, especially Twitter. On Twitter, he did not use his real name. He created accounts where he could talk to people who were feeling very sad and lonely. A friend from his school years later told police that when they were teenagers, Takahiro liked to play choking games. These are dangerous games where someone chokes another person to get a brief feeling of lightheadedness. The friend said Takahiro was more interested in these games than others were. This was a behavior from his past that others found odd. By the summer of 2017, Takahiro felt his life had no direction. He told his father during an argument that his life had no meaning. He decided to move out of Tokyo. He rented a new, small apartment in a quiet building in the city of Zama. He moved there in August 2017. He brought very few things with him. In his new apartment in Zama, Takahiro Shiraishi began to use Twitter in a more focused way. He created profiles that pretended to be understanding and kind. He searched for posts with tags like, "I wanna die," or "suicide." He would then send private messages to these people, who were often young women. His method was always the same. He would say he felt the same way. He would offer to talk. He would suggest they could help each other. Sometimes he offered to help them die without pain. Other times he suggested they should die together in a suicide pact. He said his apartment was a safe place to do this. The first person to believe him was a 21-year-old woman named Mizuki Miura. She had posted online about her deep sadness. In late August 2017, she agreed to meet him at a train station and go to his apartment. Once inside, he gave her a drink. He then suggested they start the suicide process. When she was unsure or scared, he used force. He strangled her with a rope. After she was dead, he took her money. He also had sex with her body. Now he had a body in his small apartment. He needed to hide it. He bought a large cooler box and tools from a hardware store. He dismembered Mizuki's body in his bathroom. He put the body parts into the cooler box and sealed it. He cleaned the bathroom carefully. This first crime gave him a feeling of control. He continued using Twitter to find more people. In September, he contacted a 15-year-old high school girl named Kureha Ishihara. She came to his apartment. He followed the same pattern. He talked about suicide, then strangled her. He took her money and assaulted her body. He dismembered her and placed her remains in another storage box. A pattern was now set. He would lure a person to his apartment. He would talk about suicide to lower their guard. Then he would strangle them. His motive was money and sexual assault. He robbed each victim after they were dead. He bought more large storage boxes to hold the dismembered bodies. The boxes filled his small living space. In October, a 20-year-old man named Shogo Nishinaka contacted him. Shogo was looking for his female friend who was missing. This friend was one of the women Shiraishi had already killed. Shogo came to the apartment asking questions. Shiraishi felt he had no choice. He let Shogo inside, and then strangled him too. This was his only male victim. The number of victims grew quickly. Over 2 months, he killed 9 people. The victims were 8 women and 1 man, aged from 15 to 26. They all came to his apartment believing they had found someone who understood their pain. The apartment now contained 9 dismembered bodies stored in cooler boxes and plastic storage bins. To manage the smell, he used large amounts of air freshener and cat litter. He also placed some smaller body parts into plastic bags and put them in his regular kitchen trash. This trash was collected by the city's garbage service. Neighbors in the apartment building began to notice a bad smell from his unit. They thought it was like rotten garbage or spoiled meat. One neighbor almost complained to the building manager, but did not. His final victim was a 23-year-old woman named Aiko Tamura on October 23, 2017. He met her at the station, walked her to his apartment, and killed her. Her brother was worried about her. He knew she used Twitter to talk about sad feelings. This brother would start the process that ended the crimes. On October 24, 2017, Aiko Tamura's brother went to a police station in Tokyo. He reported that his sister was missing. He told the police she was very depressed and used Twitter to talk about suicide. He showed them her Twitter account, where he saw her last conversations with a user named Piston. The brother believed Piston was the person who had met with his sister. The police took the report seriously. They advised the brother not to contact Piston directly yet. However, the brother was desperate. He and a female friend, known publicly as Yumi, decided to act. Yumi used her own Twitter account to contact Piston, pretending she also wanted to die. She set up a meeting for that same evening at Zama Station. The brother then immediately informed the police of this plan. Police officers from the Kanagawa Prefectural Police followed Yumi to the station. They watched as a man, later identified as Takahiro Shiraishi, met her. He led her toward his apartment building. The police moved in and stopped Shiraishi before he could take her inside. They identified themselves and asked him about the missing woman, Aiko Tamura. Shiraishi was calm at first. The officers asked to see his apartment. He agreed. Inside, the police saw many large storage boxes and coolers. They noticed a very strong smell of air freshener and a worse, underlying odor. An officer pointed to a large cooler and asked what was inside. Shiraishi said, "The woman you are looking for is in the freezer." The police opened the cooler and discovered human remains. They arrested Shiraishi on the spot. A full search of the apartment followed. Investigators found a total of 9 dismembered bodies in 2 large coolers and 5 storage boxes. The bodies were in various states of decomposition. In the bathroom, forensic experts found traces of blood and evidence of dismemberment. They also found ropes and tools. Neighbors were interviewed. Several confirmed they had noticed a terrible smell coming from the apartment for weeks. One neighbor said they thought it was from bad meat or garbage. This corroborated the timeline of the crimes. Shiraishi was taken to the police station for questioning. He confessed very quickly. He told the police he had contacted suicidal people on Twitter. He said he lured them to his apartment, strangled them, stole their money, and sexually assaulted the female victims after death. He said he killed the man because he was looking for one of the missing women. His stated motives were money and sexual desire. He explained in detail how he dismembered the bodies to store them and how he disposed of some parts with the regular trash. The police worked to identify all 9 victims through DNA and personal items found in the apartment. The victims' families were notified. The news shocked Japan. Shiraishi was charged with 9 counts of murder, robbery, rape, and desecration of corpses. His lawyers initially planned a defense that some victims had consented to die. However, at his trial in Tokyo District Court, Shiraishi himself pleaded guilty to all charges on October 1st, 2020. He said he wanted to admit his actions. During the trial, the judge heard detailed evidence about each victim. The prosecution argued that his crimes were calculated and exceptionally cruel. They asked for the death penalty. On December 15, 2020, the judge agreed and sentenced Takahiro Shiraishi to death by hanging. The judge said his actions showed extreme selfishness and a total disregard for human life. Shiraishi accepted the sentence and said he would not appeal. His death sentence was finalized by Japan's Supreme Court in January 2021. He remained in prison for several years. On June 27, 2025, the Japanese Ministry of Justice announced that Takahiro Shiraishi had been executed by hanging at the Tokyo Detention Center. The families of the victims were left to live with their grief. The case led to more discussion in Japan about social media, mental health, and how people expressing suicidal thoughts online can be targeted by predators. Takahiro Shiraishi's apartment building was eventually demolished. He was executed for his crimes, and the case was closed.